Today's program is brought to you by pennystockprofessor.com. For all the best OTCBB stock picks, sign up at pennystockprofessor.com. Thank you for tuning in to another TBC Daily News Update. I'm Brandon Vincent.
And I'm Angelina Soriano. In entertainment news, a 16-year-old girl has set out to become the youngest person to sail around the world alone. Abby Sunderland of Thousand Oaks sailed into the sunny Pacific Ocean on Saturday after being delayed a few days by a series of violent storms in California. Her boat builder father Lawrence, along with other family members and friends, cheered at the Delray Yacht Club as they watched the 40-foot craft called Wild Eyes depart. She plans to be at sea for 5 or 6 months. She will be alone but able to communicate via satellite telephone and a blog at abbysunderland.com. The current record holder is 17-year-old Mike Perham of Britain, who took the mark last year from then 17-year-old brother Zach. We will keep you up to date as the story progresses.
In today's U.S. news, Google founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin plan to sell off 5 million Google shares each over the next 5 years, a move that could see them surrender majority voting control over the company they created. Google has an unusual dual stock structure. Class A shares are publicly traded on the NASDAQ exchange, while Class B shares are reserved for insiders and carry 10 times the voting power of other shares. Brin and Page plan to dip into their deep reservoir Class B shares, selling up to 17% of the 57.7 million shares they currently hold. According to a regulatory filing submitted by Friday, those sales would reduce the voting power over Google stock from 59% to around 48%, depriving them of majority control. But CEO Eric Schmidt currently holds shares accounting for almost 10% of Google's voting power. Together, the trio would continue to control Google. The three of them run the company collaboratively, with Sergey and Page as presidents. The structure is unconventional, but they have worked successfully in this way. Google created its two stock classes because of the founders' desire to keep control vested with their management team. It's a risk to shareholders that Google discloses routinely in its regulatory reports.
Today in international news, last month, advocates and opponents of same-sex marriage packed the New Jersey State House in Trenton, supporters in blue, opponents in red. Near the end of the day, Casey Nicholson McFadden, who is 10, took the microphone. "It doesn't bother me to tell kids my parents are gay," he said in a clear voice. "It does bother me to say they aren't married. It makes me feel that our family is less than other families." In fact, Garden State Equality, the New Jersey gay rights organization that invited Casey to speak, quickly told reporters they would pursue the issue through the judiciary system. It will be familiar territory for the Nicholson McFaddens, who vow to press on, be it through rallies or lawsuits. In 2008, about 116,000 same-sex couples across were raising a total of about 250,000 children under the age of 18, according to analysis of census data by Gary J. Gates, a demographer of the gay and lesbian population at the Williams Institute at the University of California, Los Angeles Law School. While opponents of same-sex marriage worry that schools will teach that gay and straight relationships are equal, many supporters focus on a different but still child-centered issue, with questions like, what about the children now being raised in families headed by gay men and lesbians, and how does the lack of marriage benefits for their parents affect them? With 31 states having projected same-sex marriage, most recently in Maine, New Jersey, and New York, strategy used by supporters now include projecting a mainstream family image in public opinion campaigns surrounding court battles like the challenge to Proposition 8, the ballot measure that reversed marriage rights for same-sex couples in California. Many gay rights activists think that hearing articulate children of same-sex parents ask why their families should have fewer rights than their neighbors goes a long way towards turning the family values arguments on its head. Last week, Chaya Connolly Ingram, who is 21 and the daughter of a lesbian couple, helped close the rally outside the federal courthouse in San Francisco, where Proposition 8 is being challenged. "As the daughter of lesbian moms, I know that children are affected by this decision," said Ms. Connolly Ingram. Evan Wolfson, executive director of Freedom to Marry, a New York-based organization that advocates for legalized same-sex marriage, said, "There is no good reason to punish children raised by gay parents by denying parents marriage and its protection. It harms kids rather than helping them. Opponents of same-sex marriage are unswayed. It doesn't make any sense that a small segment of society can leverage major social change simply by putting children into these situations purposely," said Andrew Puno, General Counsel for ProtectMarriage.com, the California organization that sponsored Proposition 8. Society is not forcing same-sex couples to raise children. If they are going to exercise their choice, it remains their choice and not become something that society had to realign itself to accept. Mr. Puno's position is shared by others. The real question is whether same-sex relationships benefit children to the same extent that living with a married mother and father does, and we believe they do not, said Peter Sprigg, Senior Fellow for Policy Studies at the Family Research Council, the conservative Christian organization. Children do best when raised by their own biological mother and father who are committed to one another in a lifelong marriage.
In today's financial news, after the worst week on Wall Street in almost a year, investors will return to work looking for greater clarity from Washington, from the banks and from corporate America. The Dow plunged 4% last week, its worst week since March 6 of 2009, the bottom of the bear market. Stocks got hit from all sides, from the White House's proposal to impose more restrictions on banks, China's moves to rein in economic growth, and questions about whether Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke will win confirmation for a second term. His first term ends January 31st. That uncertainty sparked the sell-off last week, but it doesn't mean that will continue in the week ahead. The week ahead brings the latest Federal Reserve policy meeting, the first reading on the fourth quarter GDP growth, and the President's State of the Union address, as well as profit reports from a host of major companies. More than a quarter of S&P 500 companies are due to report results this week, including Dow Components, Microsoft, Chevron, DuPont, and Verizon. Ford Motor is expected to report a big profit versus a loss a year ago. Yahoo is expected to report a drop in profits, and Amazon.com is to report a rise. So far, strong results have been met with indifference by investors. Google, IBM, Intel, and American Express all reported better than expected results, only to see their stocks tumble. In the wake of the big stock rally of 2009, investors are looking for more than just improved earnings on the back of cost cutting. In today's green news, California's global warming law calls for utilities to increase their use of renewable energy to at least 30% by 2020, and some say they may not make it. Enter Areva SA, a power developer largely owned by the French government, which has signed an agreement with Fresno Nuclear Energy Group to build nuclear reactors in California's Central Valley. Whether they will ever be able to build is another question altogether. California turned against nuclear power in the 70s and has not looked back. Berkeley won't do business with any company that supports nuclear energy. Sacramento, the state's capital, has had a moratorium on nukes since 1976. But Areva SE is betting that the Golden State's disfavor of nuclear power won't stand up after regulators and citizens look closely at their climate goals. The developers think that if the state is to reduce emissions by 80% by 2050, which the global warming laws call for, then it must have a clean baseload power, and nuclear reactors are the best option. The situation is a clear example of what may await the rest of the country if we have a climate bill pass. Many environmentalists are against nuclear power because of waste problems, safety issues, and the idea that money is better spent on nuclear than renewables like wind and solar. But the drive to reduce global warming emissions is enough incentive for some to overlook nuclear shortcomings and give it another try. Thank you for tuning in to another TBC Daily News Update. I'm Brandon Vincent.
And I'm Angelina Soriano.